absolutely. No, thank you for having us. So my name's Charlie. I work for Corivate. So we are the developers of the Vocator Cloud platform. My background is I'm a chartered land surveyor. I've been working in the survey industry now since about 1999 over here in the UK, and working with Point Cloud specifically since pretty much they first came commercially available, so in about 2003, 2004. I've worked with hardware manufacturers and now found my home within a software development company, which is probably the most exciting sort of opportunity at the moment with regards to point clouds, because I think that's where the big changes are starting to really happen. The hardware's the hardware, and everyone's familiar with point cloud data, but now we're starting to see how actually we can get the most out of our point cloud data, and that's for me really exciting.
And, yeah, it is. And on that note, that is kind of what our readers and whatnot have been really curious about, because yes, we're better able to collect data more now than we ever could. And then you, with your history, would, kind of seen that evolution happen. But is there still kind of a sticky part of that workflow between actually collecting the data and getting it to something that's usable, that you can take action on? Where do you think those kind of like bottlenecks are in that process?
I think it's been interesting because, as you say, I have seen those changes. I've seen laser scanning go from being 1,000 points a second data capture at, in the very early days, through to some hardware manufacturers obviously delivering 2 million points a second, which is such a huge sort of opportunity that's happened there in terms of how we can capture more data. But the big thing is how we can work with that data efficiently. So part of it is time, and I think even more so in the last 12 months, 18 months since we've been in the middle of the pandemic, I think people have valued their time very differently. So that's a big change. But I think also that how people use their hardware is a big change these days. It's gone away from being one hardware manufacturer and you stay with that hardware manufacturer. Certainly what we're starting to see is people applying different tools for different jobs, and that's not necessarily all with the same manufacturer and all in the same workflow. It's starting to pull on maybe drone or aerial data with SLAM mobile handheld data, but also mixing that in with static data. And that's I think even different to how the hardware vendors thought that their instruments were going to be used. And I think some of that comes down to affordability. It used to be obviously laser scanners had a very, very high price tag on entry. But since that price tag's come down and the technology's become more accepted and more readily used, and also across different disciplines, it's not just the AEC market we're dealing with customers in. I think how that those opportunities are very different. You could potentially be scanning with a drone and combining that with static data, but then also having various area referencing projects where you start to go in with mobile data, because it's actually the most time efficient to deliver the expectation of accuracy. So I think that's been a huge change that I've noticed. And I think we'll continue to see the users pushing those boundaries, and they're really driving these changes. And it does feel that the software vendors are playing that game of sort of trying to predict that next big change that's going to happen in the market.
So can you tell me a little bit more about kind of what Vocator is and how it fits into that entire kind of spectrum?
Sure. So as I said earlier, Vocator is a cloud-based platform for processing point cloud data. So to give you a little bit of our background, so we origin out of we come from a company called Corivate. The origin of the technology was in a research project born out of the Department of Electrical Engineering of University College London. We've taken that project and commercialized it. And in the last couple of years, that was in 2017. And in the last couple of years, we've sort of accelerated it, enhanced it. And the big change for us came in July 2019 when we launched that registration service into the cloud. So as a on-cloud process. The Vocator Cloud is a coagulation of different services, essentially. So we're taking on that ability to initially take our point cloud data and register it. And we don't really care which point clouds we come from, whichever data formats we can accept. But then we also offer a format conversion service. So anyone who's coming in that wants to go from A to B, so we can take that one as well. But we've got some really exciting stuff that we're starting to work on in the background, which is the more deep learning and the machine learning side of working with point cloud data and the efficiencies that we can drive from that. So from our side of things, the automation is key, and that's a key to any change, and like I say, driving the efficiency through actually people utilising their time a lot better. And we see the US and Canadian market quite differently to how the on-site office-based operations are quite separate. Whereas the UK, it's an all-in-one process. The same data capture professional would go out and do the capture and then register and work on that point cloud. So there's quite a different sort of segue of how people work with point clouds as well that we're seeing. So Vocata having the benefit of automating, using the scalability of the cloud, obviously we don't need to worry about licensing flexibility, which again has been a huge challenge in the last 18 months for a lot of people. But that key thing is time. You know, if we can automate and make workflows more efficient, then actually bringing together a scan project of 300, 400, 500 scans in a couple of hours, completely automated, really does change people's how they can work with their data.
So for those who have not worked with point clouds in the clouds before, what is that really like? You know, where does that really true advantage bring you versus what they're doing now?
So I think for us, scalability, we've seen that, you know, with speed increases of hardware, the pure volumes and sizes of point clouds have grown from, you know, small numbers, maybe 100 scans. Now we're easily capturing 200 scans a day per scanner. And if a company's running with 15, 17, 20 scanners, then they've got a lot of data to start to churn through back in the office. And having having that reliance on heavyweight desktop processing software does have its limitations. And you've got to have an underpinning of that with pretty high, hefty, you know, price tag of technology of workstations processing that data behind as well to deliver those sorts of size of projects. Obviously with the cloud, we've kind of got unlimited computer resource on tap. So it does allow people to scale and we can infinitely take on more and more resource. Yes, we've got to get the point clouds in the cloud at the first place, but we are seeing, we've got a range of different ways that people do that. We've got Dropbox integration, so people can very quickly drop and go with scans. Most people will just upload scans, but we're also seeing companies having their own cloud-based storage, be it AWS or blob storage or you know, any of the major parties. So again, there's that sort of change in how people are accepting the cloud. So the headaches that we probably saw 2-3 years ago don't seem to exist for a lot of companies anymore, which is great.
Yeah. And are there still ways that the cloud needs to continue to improve and evolve, or are we like happy with everything that it can do now? And, you know, kind of what do you see as the future of that development?
So I think that's an interesting question for us, because where we see it is the cloud's reaching a good level of maturity. There's two in my opinion, there's sort of two ends of the spectrum that aren't really addressed. So we cover that bit in the middle. So efficiency through automation through the cloud. But we've got to get data into the cloud. So a lot of some of the people we've spoken to historically have said, oh, but it takes so long to put my data in the cloud. And we're seeing obviously better infrastructure, but I think where we'll see the changes coming will be driven by the hardware manufacturers. So the ability from on-site using 5G infrastructure and being either able to bounce from the hardware to a tablet and into the cloud, but either potentially in the future, hopefully there's an opportunity there for the hardware manufacturers to be able to stream straight to the cloud, to integrate some sort of data service within their devices. And then from there, we're literally pushing data. So as soon as that data's up, you can start that registration process. We actually run a field app. So we've seen sort of how people are starting to work with cloud-based and this separation between on-site and office. And gone are the days of having to sketch and lose bits of papers or they get tattered or wet or whatever. We've actually got a field app, so it allows you to basically take a scan plan, place your scan locations, link them to the next location so you know what's been captured and from where and what the links are, all in that digital world, and then simply export from there and take that into it. So if we're starting to combine that sort of app-based application plus the ability for hardware manufacturers to actually stream and push those individual scan files up without the operator knowing almost, then we can really see big efficiencies from that. And I suppose the other side of things is once we've done the registration, well, people then potentially are then back into that desktop workflow. So we'd like to see a lot more of the downstream Autodesk, Bentley, Navisworks, those sorts of types of programs, Revit, that people are using, and suppliers, actually seeing those programs connect into other clouds. So being able to take your registered point cloud that's in the cloud invocator, but also then being able to connect it to Graphisoft or Autodesk or Bentley or wherever you might want to be going. So I think that's another big step change that we'll start to see within the industry.
And clearly you guys are really right in the middle of all this. Can I ask what's new in Vercator? Are there features that you're kind of excited about or working on?
Yeah, so we've had an interesting 6 months really. So like I say, we took Vercator to the cloud, the registration service to the cloud in 2019. I joined the company when did I join? August of 2019. And obviously last year was a huge sort of turmoil for everybody. So we introduced a few sharing functionalities, mainly because people were working potentially at home or doing night shifts and they weren't going back into the office. So we introduced that ability to share point cloud data once you've done a registration. But then we had a big change, which we brought online at the end of last year, which historically we've always been very much settled within the static data market. So static scanning using your Faro scanner, your Leica scanner, or your Regal scanner, or your ZNF. So those sorts of very static workflows, and knowing the parameters of where the scanner was and things like that. We were fortunate to receive an accelerator project. So somebody came to us with a problem they wanted solving, and we delivered. So we took on the ability to take in multiple data formats from multiple hardware sources. So we at that point took on these more mobile data formats, so your LAZs, LASs, PLY data files. To essentially sort of adapt to a changing market. And so we introduced a second algorithm. So we've got our traditional algorithm, which is very much around the sort of built environment, so hard geometry, because we are fully cloud to cloud, that's where the automation comes from. And then we were able to take in these data sets from more mobile sources, which we're finding people use a bit more organically. So for tree surveys or graveyards or tunnels and in the mining environment. So being able to blend those two data sets together was a big change for us. So taking static, putting it with SLAM, taking drone data, putting that with static and SLAM, and seeing this very much this emergence of these hybrid or sensor fusion workflows. And that's been a real change for us, these sort of more natural-based applications of how people are putting laser scanners to best use, really.
Yeah, and I really do think that is something that we're continuing to see more of a need for, which is, people are taking these wonderful tools and combining them in new ways for new use cases. And I think that's very exciting.
And it makes a lot of sense, really, because it's long been this challenge, and having been on the hardware sales, in the sort of the mid 2010s, it was people were deploying laser scanning technology, and it was becoming fairly well accepted. But the challenge was that there was always a degree of budget constraint. So there was always this element, well, I have to choose the scanner that best fits everything I might want to do. And they were reluctant to choose the scanner that would fit 90% of their business. They wanted this one tool, one size fits all approach. And it doesn't lend itself to being the most flexible, because you could be deploying essentially the Rolls-Royce of scanners on what is a quite simple project, whereas that Rolls-Royce scanner could be better deployed on a different project. So I think that's been the shift change. As prices of hardware come down, then people have been able to pick and choose a bit better. They've been able to pick actually the right tool for the right job at the right time and deploy those. But the challenge that comes with that in the traditional workflow is that you end up being sort of dropped into these silos of hardware dependent workflows. And that's really what we wanted to sort of change, was this reliance on or having to fall into these vendor specific workflows, because it doesn't necessarily give you the best flexibility, and it doesn't potentially give you the best value for money, because you've got the opportunity of or potential of having to pay annual maintenance on 4, 5, 6 different bits of software just to keep current. Whereas actually, if we can take all of those data, blend it together in a simple tariff that's continuously updated, because that's the beauty of the cloud. We don't have to go back to an IT department and say we need to update the next version or update ourselves to the next version. It just seamlessly ticks on in the background. So that's a huge winner for people as well.
So in the future, if people want to check out Verkada or give that a test or just investigate how that might work for their workflows, what's the best first step for them to find out more information?
Okay, so we do offer a free trial because everybody offers a free trial, and it's a really good way. Actually, it's an interesting approach because I've obviously come from this hardware where you always go and you do this demo, and it's a very personal. We're seeing there's almost this sort of people want to go and explore these options. So we offer a free trial. It's a 30-day. We run on a token-based system, so we don't have an annual subscription or a license fee or anything. We run on a pay-as-you-go essentially. So to process scans, you need tokens. So we offer you 50 complimentary tokens to get you started. If you want to try it with a bigger project, by all means, get in contact with us, and we can obviously arrange slightly bigger trials. But we find that's a sensible number to get people started with. We can do demonstrations, so we do have the opportunity to do a run through of a screen share. We can show you a historical project. We've even got test data up in our cloud for people to use. They don't need to go through that process of uploading their own data or anything like that, even as part of the trial process. So by all means, come along with you can access the trial from our website, which is www.verkada.com. And like I say, we're happy to help along the way with people if they've got any questions. And obviously we do bespoke development. So if someone's got a real pressing need, then we are a small and flexible startup here in the UK that we can obviously assist if people have got something that's a real pain point for them.
Great. And I think my final question is just, is there anything you're excited about for the future? What's the next few, leaps that you hope happen?
We've got some, we've obviously the registration is where our main commercial service lies at the moment, but we have, we are developing, in the background as you would. So we're busy working on machine learning at the moment. So the big savings we see in the industry come from, as we said earlier, with automation. So we're automating our registration process, but the next big thing is obviously to try and automate those processes of what people do with the data. We're able to capture these amazingly dense and information-rich point clouds. So let's actually use it a bit more efficiently. As long as I've been in the scanning industry, the holy grail is automation. So scan to BIM, extracting out solid objects from a point cloud, being able to segment and classify that point cloud data so that we can either count it from an asset management, we can understand its spatial relationship, where that asset is located, how many assets have I got in my database. But then when we start to look at the pure bread and butter and what a lot of the survey market and modeling market are after is taking out, so classifying or segmenting that point cloud into smaller component objects, doors, windows, walls, ceilings, floors, chairs, desks, whatever else you want to throw out, fire equipment. As long as we can train the database, we can start to extract out that information. So we're at alpha stage. We're running a few pilot projects with some discrete customers at the moment who are very interested in these services. And obviously the plan is to commercialize these services early in 2022, so early next year. And that's a big game changer as far as we're concerned. It's been promised for such a long time, and we're very, very close, which is very exciting for us. But I think it's also we obviously started this journey very much within the BIM and the sort of the built environment and surveying as that sort of the bread and butter essentially. But actually, where we're being pulled by different people who've come across us and have got interested in the services are very, they're very different, and that's as much as a challenge as an excitement for us.
Absolutely. And it must be exciting too, just seeing that evolution in the course of your career as well.
Yeah, no, I've been very lucky. And, I got into surveying by complete fluke, however many years ago it was now, many years ago. Took a gap year, ended up working for a Severn partnership here in the UK. And as they say, the rest is history. Fell into point clouds, was fortunate to be coming out of university just as that technology was really starting to hit the market. And went that way. And I've bit of university teaching and student presentations and things, and I always have said that laser scanning is a great skill to learn because it really will take you everywhere and anywhere. My background's geology, and I've ended up in surveying, and it's still as relevant, and actually we're starting to see laser scanning being deployed in very much those mining environments, very much in the geotech environment, knowing and having that historical record and that fact. The scanner doesn't lie, and that's great for so many different applications. We can have that single source of truth, and I think we'll start to see as we move forward with point clouds them being very much replacing almost those 3D images and those those building blocks for a digital handover. I mean, that would be a fantastic opportunity for point clouds and laser scanning technology if we can start to have an interactive point cloud. And that's really where I think there's huge opportunity, and certainly where we plan on going.
Well, thank you so much for your time to talk about this, and it's a very exciting vision of the future that we definitely share here at GeoWeek. This is, this is where we see all of this tech heading. So thank you so much for your time, and good luck with the further releases as well.
No, thank you very much. Thanks, Carla.